All right. So here's my dashboard. If you guys are members of Fintel, you guys are probably aware of this. Here's the team space I was talking about. Click on Teams, and there's a welcome group here that you can join. Please join this welcome group and say hello, and I will join you there, and we can talk about stock screening and everything else you want to talk about. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Here's the stock screener. I have seeded this kind of initial text area with a bunch of rules that I think are kind of demonstrable or kind of demonstrate the power of what we have. This is basically a text editor here. I can see that we could probably use a little bit more space in here. But the idea is that you're going to create expressions, mathematical expressions, or if you're a programmer, just any kind of expressions that represent a filter that will be applied to kind of financial attributes to the stock market. So there's about 18,000 stocks in the US stock market right now. Right now, the stock screener only covers US stocks. We do have coverage. We are aware of foreign stocks on Fintel. Obviously, we have a lot of ownership data of foreign stocks, but we don't have financial, we don't have like the balance sheet and cash flow statement stuff like of foreign stocks. I say quote foreign, but international non-US stocks. And so we don't really do the stock screener for kind of these non-US stocks. Now we could change that. We could go out and we could license data, and we're looking at doing that. But for now, the coverage is only for the US stocks. There's also the possibility that we could, because we have pricing data for non-US stocks, we could also create a limited version of the stock screener that only looks at like technical indicators. So you would be able to say, the MACD or the EMA of a company is greater than this or that. That's something we can talk about in the message board. So let me just kind of walk through this. The original kind of impetus or the original inspiration for this stock screener came around from Benjamin Graham's famous net current asset value formula. Those of you who have followed him will probably recognize something like this, which is basically his formula for finding, or it was Warren Buffett's approach to investing. He would take the net assets minus the liabilities, and he would have some kind of margin of error, and he would buy it if it was, greater than the market cap. And so when I went looking around for a stock screener that did something like that, there was nothing to be found. There was no way you could do that type of equation with a stock screener. And so I thought, well, why don't we see if we can do this ourselves? And so that's kind of how this got started, was the ability to be able to say, I want to put a variable on the left and a variable on the right of some type of conditional, okay? And like I said, most of the time, most stock screeners that I found at the time did not allow that. And so if you just did that, okay, and you said get results, it's going to go out and it's going to look at all the companies, it's going to find all the companies with assets, all the companies with liabilities, it's going to do this math on it, and it's going to return you all the companies for which this expression is true. And now you need to have a semicolon at the end, because in theory, if I've done this correctly, you can't actually word wrap these expressions. I designed that to be able to have complex expressions. It's not working. Okay, so at one point you could do that. I'll have to go back and take a look at it and see what the issue is. But the idea here is that you want to be able to provide complex, rich expressions. And so that's kind of how that got started. So let me walk you through a couple other things. If you want a complete list of terms that are available, then you can go to, I'm going to open this up, open this link in a new tab. I'm going to go over here. These are all the terms that you can use. You can see that a lot of these are from the balance sheet, the income statement, cash flow statement. There's some basic share data. There's a few extra terms that I've put in here, like ROA, ROIC, and things like that. Cash from operations. I can't say I've done a very good job of organizing these, and I'm trying to work on a better data dictionary here, but this is kind of what it is. Then we have growth of all of these kind of financial terms. So if you want to look at like revenue growth and things like that, or accounts payable growth, this shows you the growth in 1 year. All of this data comes from the XBRL filings that are embedded in the 10Ks and the 10Qs. And so, what does that mean? Well, it means that, we're getting raw data. The companies have to file a 10K and a 10Q with the SEC. They include XBRL, which is a form of XML, which is basically machine readable. They say things like our assets were, some certain number this quarter, and they also provide data prior to that. But I have to tell you, it's not very normalized. And so, for example, if you come down here and look at revenue, if you go look at Tesla revenue, there's things like automobile sales revenue, or this kind of revenue, or that kind of revenue. And so you get a situation where you're trying to compare revenue across multiple companies, and it's not always that easy. And so we try to do our best to normalize it. But I have to tell you that it's not easy, and you have to really look carefully at these results. Okay, and there's nothing I can do about that, unfortunately. It's just the way the XBRL is. There is an opportunity for us to license normalized data from either Reuters or CapIQ, and we're looking into that, but it becomes very expensive. And we've tried to make sure that this is accessible to everybody. And so there might be an opportunity in the future for somebody who's interested in that type of extra data, and also include international data, foreign securities, to be able to pay an extra fee, a premium fee, to be able to access that data. If you like that and you're interested in that, please let us know in the message board, and I will kind of reprioritize that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A here too. I'll try to answer them in real time. If not, we can put them in the message board. So that's kind of, this is kind of the basics. So let me just walk through this. This is basically assets minus liabilities. You can put or you can put parentheses around these, like I've done here. You can say market cap is greater than 100 million. I look at things like B, and I look at T for billion and trillion. I even think that I will look at K for 100,000. So keep that in mind. K is 100,000. T is 100 trillion, I believe, is how it works. If you just wanted to say this also works, but I don't think that this will work. So don't put commas in your numbers here. In regards to the exchanges, we've had a lot of requests to be able to do things like get rid of exchanges and get rid of or focus on specific industries. The biggest request was people didn't want to get OTC stocks in their screening results. And so I wasn't able to spend a lot of time with this, but I was able to at least build something like this. You could either do exchange equals OTC, or exchange does not equal OTC. And you can do things like these are the other exchanges if you're interested: New York Stock Exchange and Amex, which is really the New York Stock Exchange, but we still use this old designator. Unfortunately, I don't believe you can do ORs on this, and we don't have the ability to do something like this yet. Although, again, if this is really exciting to somebody, let me know, and I will work on it. But this is kind of on the product roadmap to be able to do this. Mostly people wanted to be able to get rid of OTC stocks, and so we have this. So the other thing that's interesting here is that you don't actually have to put an expression here to be able to get the information on the report. And so in many ways, this is kind of like a reporting tool where you could actually say, I don't necessarily want to eliminate companies with low volume, but I want to see the volume in the results. And so you just put, the information here that's cash from operations, and it will just show up here on the header. We basically look at all of the terms in here and extract them and put them on the header for you. Okay, so this is cash from operations. And then in terms of revenue, in terms of these growth figures, you can actually specify you should be able to specify any financial statement number in here. So for example, revenue growth, or I think it would be like net income growth greater than 5%. The trick is that we actually display it in a ratio form. So if you take a look at this, 5% and 0.05, these two are equivalent. So we convert to the ratio form from percentage form internally, and we display it in ratio form. So in many of these cases, we're getting numbers that are pretty extraordinary. So any questions about this so far? I'm not seeing any questions. Can I specify price between 20? Yeah, so each line of this is an and. So what you would do for that is you would say price is greater than 20, price is less than 50. Okay, so that will basically solve your problem there of doing an and. Historical annual is it historical annual revenue? It's 1 year and it's 1 year annual growth. So we look at the current annual report, the current annual report to find the current revenue. We look at the prior year annual report to find the prior year's annual revenue, and we take the subsequent one minus the first one divided by the first one. That's how we calculate growth rates. So the question is, can I specify a specific sector, e.g. biotech? So that is now that we have solved the problem of exchange does not equal OTC, the second most requested enhancement is to be able to screen on specific sectors. So internally, you can't do it yet. That's the short version. But I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking about doing. Internally, we store all of the industries with SIC codes. This is what we get from the SEC. Companies have to specify the SEC, and they get assigned a department at the SEC who they file with based on their SIC code. And so the SIC code that we get from the SEC is actually very accurate. So what we're probably going to do is something like this: SIC equals 665, okay? And that would basically be able to specify the industry. There's possibly some enhancements to that, but that is going to probably be the first approach that we take to this. Will the retrieval of results be quicker in the future? So it's a good question. The answer, I think, is probably yes. There's a lot of things that we can do to make this faster. There's actually quite a bit of calculation that goes on in the background, and so and a lot of caching as well. And so there's this trade-off between getting the data like really super accurate, like, if data changes today or like an hour ago, do you want to get that kind of data like really accurate, or are you willing to suffer a little bit of accuracy for performance? And then in that case, we could actually cache stuff in memory for more than a day. And so that's kind of the trade-off. Right now, I'm focusing on trying to make it accurate and current. And so that's why it's a little bit slower right now. So the question is, industry filter would be good to have. This comment over here on the chat is actually a really good comment to be able to say things like, because what he's pointing out here is that right now, you can only kind of look at T equals 0, which is today, where the most recent kind of information. But what is being suggested is being able to say something like, what if you wanted to compare the pricing for today versus the pricing minus 5 days ago? It's a good question. It's a good, what you've proposed here is a very interesting approach to building a grammar around that, and I like that. And we've been looking at this for a while. We don't have it quite yet, but I think, it's something that we would like to be able to do. One of the things I've been looking at doing, one approach to this is to be able to say something like, is to encode durations, something like this with a period, because the parser would be wanting to treat this whole thing as a single token. So day 5 or 5 days ago, something like that. Okay. Go look at JK's stock chart. Okay, good question. Being able to catch at the head would make people rich. Okay, great. One of the things that we don't do a lot of here that we focused on is again, we've focused on kind of financial data, but I'm looking at things like closing, EMA is greater than EMA 50 is greater than closing EMA 200. So that would give you a crossover indicator. Okay. I don't know what your strategies are, but I presume there's a lot of people that probably look at technical analysis. We don't have a lot of technical indicators in the stock screener. if you have a technical indicator that you like a lot, it's not a lot of work for me to add these because we have the data. So, you know, jump in here and tell us what you want. The question is, how often do you update the data the pricing? So we get the pricing data daily. Of course, we get end of day pricing data. We don't do intraday really at all on Fintel right now. The financial statements come in quarterly on a schedule that is not determined by us. It's determined by the SEC. So typically, you're going to see a 10Q get filed within, I would say, a month or so of the end of the quarter, maybe 45 days. The question is, can you export the results to Excel? I don't think you can right now, but there's no reason why we wouldn't. We shouldn't be able to provide it. The issue is that we're going to be licensing some data, and in some data is not. We're not allowed to redistribute that, and so we would have to figure out how to allow you to do a screen and then not actually be able to download that data. If you save this, I should have mentioned this. If you can actually save the screen, and what will happen is it will be saved. Obviously, you'll be able to go to your screens here and see your screens. These are my screens, and then we actually run those screens for you every day at night after the market closes and after we get all of the new data. And this is kind of slow, and there's a way that we can improve this, but we basically run your screens every day for you, and we'll provide you with an updated list of new stocks. So you can see that this actually ran last night. Well, it runs every day, but last night it found a new, today's more or less the 8th. Recently it found a new one, Exceed World, and it picked this up for me. So if you have a strategy that you follow regularly, you know, you can put it in here and save it, and then we'll run it for you every day, and then you don't have to go back and run it every day yourself. And then you can actually see the trade history as well, and then kind of the cumulative performance. So this is something that we provide our premium subscribers. This is the cumulative history is actually kind of interesting, I think. Can you enable Excel connections so you can link to the screen results? I don't know what that means. You mean like be able to export the screen results? Okay, he's not responding. All right, so I don't really have a whole lot more to tell you about this. The screener terms are over here. Let's see if I missed it. Is there some data accuracy difference between large cap and small cap, or popular stocks and unpopular stocks? No, I mean, like I said, the data all comes from the SEC, and so you know, there's some of the data would probably be more accurate than other data. I can tell you, for example, that the insider trading data that comes in, and we actually have some really interesting. Let me go back to the screener terms here. We actually have some really interesting insider trading analytics that we've been working on. Things like insider buy-sell ratio, insider seller volume, things like that. The insider net buyer shares volume. This is basically telling you, you know, what are the insiders doing at various levels. When you see this kind of net buyer volume, what we do here is we say, let's take a look at all the insiders for this company, and let's look at all the insiders that have been selling. We count up all of the insiders that sold and all the insiders that bought in the last 90 days. And then we subtract those that sold from the ones that bought, and that gives us the net buyer. It gives us the net buyer count, insider net buyer count. The net buyer volume is the volume of shares that they bought or sold, which it could be interesting for a specific company, but it's not going to be, you know, that doesn't really, it's not really a normalized number, because one company could have 1 billion shares outstanding and another company could have 100,000 shares outstanding. So it's not really as comparable. When you start looking at things like insider net buyer shares volume over float, what we do is we take the total volume of shares that are bought and we divide it by the float of shares in that company. And then you get a really interesting normalized number that kind of shows you the insider sentiment. And so we're really trying to work on kind of metrics like that to kind of make this more interesting. And you had asked about the accuracy. The reason I talked about the accuracy for this is that we actually spent a lot of time looking at deduping insider trades and stuff like that. We haven't spent the same level of time trying to normalize the financial statements that we get, because we're going to be likely licensing normalized data at some point. Is there a glossary that breaks down the terms? There is not, and that is a big priority of mine. I need to sit down and do that. I'm going to create a data dictionary that tells you what all these things are. What about import filing data? So the question is ownership data. We do have ownership data, and I don't have a lot of it in the screener right now. And I tell you what, if you want to make a note of this in this message board, we have all of the data. We have a very, very, very good data set on ownership data, as you all probably know. And I just need to sit down and wire it to the screener, and that's not a difficult task. And so I'll commit to you, if you want to, like I said, ping me later. I'll sit down and I'll make sure that this ownership data gets into the screener, and then you can look at things like change in ownership percentages and things like that, change in number of owners. There's some really interesting metrics that we can pull out of that. Is there a search query for prior week, month percentage movements? Is that for the pricing indicator? That would be like a technical indicator. We don't have that right now. That's another thing that I need to work on, is adding more pricing related indicators. Mostly what we have is stuff that's based on the financial statements, which is my specific lens, and it's not necessarily as useful for everybody else. Okay. Anybody else? Do I have all holdings that are reported, i.e. QSIPs? Being able to target your query language against an arbitrary watch list and then be able to configure alerting. So look, yes, this is a good question here. So the question here is basically being able to apply a query language to a universe of stocks, and that's a really great idea, such as stocks in my watch list. We're actually going to be working on a better alerting system. We do have alerts. We have email alerts. We're actually in the middle of engineering right now a more extensive system that provides alerts, and that's going to include a web-based system, and it may include things like text messages or even things like a Slack channel or Discord or something like that. And so one of the things on this list is to be able to say, here's a stock screener that I have, and I want to be able to create an alert that fires whenever a new company matches the screen. And I don't know if that helps you with your question. That alert should be able to be applied to a universe as well. If you run the high net insider screen, you receive the chart of the cumulative return. Can you tell me how this is calculated? So, okay, so it's a good question. How do you calculate cumulative returns? So I'm going to give you a very short lesson in kind of portfolio calculations. So we treat this, so the way this works is if a company passes the filter or passes the screen, then it's added to the portfolio. And once it no longer passes the screen, then it's removed from the portfolio, okay? So that's kind of how we decide what comes in and what comes out. So if you take a look at the trade history, you can see that SPNX was sold on the 8th, and it was sold at 8 cents at a loss of 72 cents, okay? And so you can go through here and kind of see what's been bought and sold. Again, it's just a question of, does the stock match this formula or not? Now, at any given time, anything that's in this list, in the current holdings list, is considered the portfolio. So the question is equal dollar weight. So the answer is yes, it's an equal weighted portfolio. So, you know, we look at the closing price today of everything in the portfolio. We take out what's in what's bought or sold. We look at the closing price of everything that's there. We go to the next day. At the end of the day, we look at the closing prices of everything there. We figure out the specific return on every single stock in that portfolio, and we measure it against the total, and then we sum those returns. So something might have gone up 2%, something might have gone up 1%, something might have gone down 5%. So we sum all those, and then that's the portfolio returns. I don't know the answer to that last question. It seems you send a lot of alerts to the Fintel Twitter account. Is there a benefit to that? People like to get the alerts. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know the answer to this last question. How can Dianox be sold at 0 for a 13% gain? Well, I'll have to look into that one as well. Are there any other questions here that I can answer? I'll do my best, but it seems like we're getting a little bit further from the actual workings of of how this thing works. If not, I'm going to go ahead and kind of close it down for now. We've been talking about for about half an hour. I'm going to take this video and I'm going to put it on YouTube probably within a couple hours. And if you guys have any questions, like I said, I would love to see you guys join me in this team space here. So go to your dashboard and click on Teams. The question is there a not operator? It should be an exclamation point. It should be an exclamation point. And if it doesn't work, it's something that should be working, and it's probably a bug, and I'll take a look at that in the welcome group here. And I would love to see you guys there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop for now, and I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.